My guest is Ric Bucher, NBA analyst, author, and podcast host. You can find everything you need to know about Ric, who's my friend, at ricbucher.com. He's the author of a new book, Coachable, A New Theory of Success, available now in bookstores everywhere and on Amazon.com. Ric, thanks for joining me on Sports Business Radio. How are you?
I'm good. I'm a little bit weary. There's three parts to doing a book. There's being able to convince somebody to pay you for your idea. Then which is a lot more challenging than people may realize. Then there's actually producing the work, and then there's promoting it. And so I'm in leg 3 of the 3. And as I probably said to you after we did a book with our mutual friend Brian Grant, I don't know if I ever want to do this again. and then a little time passes, and I come up with an idea, and I'm like, I got to do this thing. So this one was as much a passion project as the one with Brian was, but maybe a little more personal, just because it encompasses a lot of what I've experienced and what I've learned over my 30-some years covering sports.
I love the book, and it's not just for sports fans. It's right. For anyone, and I think it has a wide audience. But how long did it take you to write the book?
Probably about 1.5 years, all told, close to 2 years. And then there was already considerable work done in advance in order to be able to pitch the book. So there are a lot of people that are not in the book that were instrumental in telling me their stories and explaining what being coachable meant to them and their success, that ultimately didn't make the final product, but were key in being able to convince publishers exactly what the lessons were there. And I'm glad you brought up the fact that, I think I say it at some point, this looks like a sports book. It's not, because my ambition really was to share what I learned through sports, and maybe more important, what I hoped my kids would learn from playing sports. Because I feel like that's the real disconnect here, is not understanding that it's awfully short-sighted to just look at, I want to be a starter on my team, or I want to get a D1 scholarship, or now I want to get some NIL money. It's really about learning lessons that we can apply to the rest of our lives in our jobs as CEOs, as leaders, as workers, that whatever we may do, the principles of maximizing who and what we're capable of being, that Steph Curry and Dirk Nowitzki and Steve Young and Brandi Chastain demonstrate. It's no accident that all of them have subsequently had great postseason careers, because they've been able to utilize what they learned as athletes and apply after the fact. And that's one of the big elements and themes in this book.
Yeah, the list of people that you spoke with for the book is incredible. Like you said, Mike Krzyzewski, Gregg Popovich, Steve Kerr, Steph Curry, Dirk Nowitzki, Brandi Chastain. The list goes on and on. Again, it must have taken a long time to, speak to all of these people and compile this information, but I thought you weaved it together beautifully in the book.
Well, thank you. I wanted as many athletes whose names are synonymous with championships and success. I also wanted some athletes that maybe people had not heard of, whose stories are also reflective of them, one, making the most out of who they were athletically, and then two, applying what they learned subsequent to playing or in other parts of their lives. John Staten IV, who most people probably don't know, 6 foot, maybe 200-pound linebacker coming out of a private school in Atlanta, was not recruited, had a couple of D3 offers, had a connection, and so he was able to go as a walk-on at the University of Stanford, not Stanford, Stanford, and which is I always forget the distinction between the FBC and the FBS, I think it is in football.
Yeah.
He was in the lower division
and
with Stanford, but and knew from day one, like he was going as a walk-on, he wasn't even in the special teams meetings, like, which told him they have no expectations for me. But he came up with a plan to say, I am going to be on the bus going to that first game on special teams. And this is how I'm going to get there. And ultimately then took that experience, and 3-4 years later, last year of eligibility, his dream was always to play for the University of Georgia. Crazy considering where he came from, but he had family that lived in Athens and went to all kinds of Georgia games. Lo and behold, he takes that last year. He goes, I know how to make a team as a special teams guy. I know the formula. I'm going to go to Georgia. Sure enough, goes to Georgia, makes it as a walk-on, starts and wins a championship with Georgia as a starting special teams player. So, and then went on and has been able to apply that in post career. And again, this is not a guy who was physically gifted in any way. He just understood, one, how to harness what he had, and two, this is the key part of being coachable, which is he was able to synthesize who and what he wanted to be with someone else's vision of who and what he could be. And that gave him the path to have success that would have been unimaginable at one point in his career.
You talk to coaches, I would say old school athletes, and some younger athletes.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I was going to say, do you think today's modern athlete is as coachable as the athletes when we were growing up?
I do, depending on who they're coached, but what their experience is growing up.
Okay.
I think that we're all a product to a certain extent of our environment. And a couple of the younger athletes in here, Fred VanVleet, for example, highest paid undrafted player ever in NBA history, is, if you saw him in a locker room, you'd think he was the equipment manager. I mean, he's 6 foot. If you saw him in a workout, you might think that guy can't jump. He's not particularly fast. He's kind of rotund. I mean, he's stocky, 6 foot. And yet he's won championships in the G League, won it with the Toronto Raptors, as I said, highest paid undrafted player ever, because he was a big part of it is how he was raised and came out of Rockford, Illinois, not a big AAU team, but understood this is what I have to be able to do to utilize not only my talent, but the talent around me. And then came up through a series of coaches who understood what he had and were willing to utilize it. Caroline Marks, another example, won a gold medal at the Olympics in surfing and women's surfing. And in talking to her dad and her family, it became very clear where her understanding of what it took to be coachable and accept direction came from. Because they're in Brazil on the beach and she loses and she throws her jersey at her dad and she wants to walk down the beach, and he's like, no, you're going to hand in your jersey and you're going to go shake the hand of the girl that beat you, and then we're going to stay and we're going to watch the next heat, and we're going to see what we can learn from that. And it's simple things like that. Now, keep in mind, she was arguably one of the best surfers at 12, 13 in the world at that time. And her dad was like, I don't care. Like, we're going to approach things the right way, because this isn't about winning trophies and getting ad money and all of that. It's about who you're going to be as a person. And I think Paulo Banchero's in the book too. Mario Banchero's said that he had this epiphany one day as Paulo's killing it in an AAU tournament. And he was watching some of the other star players and their parents. And he said, I had an epiphany that if my son was the greatest player in the world, but he wasn't a good person, I don't know how much satisfaction I would take out of that.
Yeah.
But if he was a great person and he was just okay as an athlete, I would feel like I had done my job.
Yeah.
And to me, that's the heart of what learning how to be coachable and the parents' piece in all of this actually is.
Yeah, I love the holistic approach. It's not just about the athlete, it's about the parents and obviously the coach. Rick, this definitely had a Bay Area feel, the book. I mean, you've got Steph,
Steve
you've got
Young,
Steve
Steph,
Kerr. Yeah.
Brandi Chastain.
Right. I was like, okay, he's tapping into the Bay Area for this book. I'm sure that was intentional. And obviously you've built really good relationships with those people.
Well, it so happened, and I could even throw Landon Donovan in there because he spent some time with the San Jose Earthquakes, and I knew him through both of us working for Fox Sports. Some of it was access. Some of it was also that familiarity, because I was asking them to really not just give me the highlights. I was asking them to give me the lowlights, and I was asking them to trust me with talking to may it their parents or their mentors or their significant others or people that were there from the beginning and might give me versions and vision and perspectives on them that were rough spots. And so I needed their confidence to be able to get the entire picture of how they came up, who they were and who they are now. And I would say, we not to skip over the whole like leadership and executive business aspect of this, but all these things that I'm talking about when we talk about parents and setting principles and we're going to do things the right way. To me, the great CEOs and leaders do the exact same thing. They're not just invested in the person, in the performer or in the worker. They're invested in the person. They want to make sure that the people that are working for them are principled, and they want to make sure that they're taking care of them in every way possible, not just in terms of what they're able to produce for the good of the company.
Yeah. I mean, I see the audience for this book obviously being athletes, obviously being coaches, because the book's called Coachable, but parents as well. And then, like you said, even business leaders. It's got a wide audience.
Yeah. When I was pitching the book, they said, "Who are you writing it for?" And I said, number one, it's for the athlete or performer. It's the person who wants to know, how do I maximize my potential? But it's as if the coaches and the parents and the mentors are all in the next room listening. Because for me, it really is the triangle of the athlete or performer, the parents or the mentors, and the coaches working together and operating under the same principles and having the same approach. Because with what was striking for me is in talking to Mike Krzyzewski and Gregg Popovich and Bruce Arena and all the different coaches that I had the opportunity to speak with, they all, I asked them the definition of coachable and how do you make it work and how do you get a player to be coachable? And they were like, well, I as a coach have to be coachable too. I have to be willing to adapt. I have to be willing to continue to learn. I have to be open to, if this doesn't work for this particular athlete, it can't be my way or the highway. That's kind of the old school approach. And you think of Pop and Krzyzewski as having sort of old school principles, and they do, but they also have been able to evolve as they've gone and apply them in a futuristic way. And a big part of that is because they have remained coachable as well.
Well, and I thought you outlined that perfectly in the book in the relationship between Steph Curry and Steve Kerr, right? Steve Kerr played with Michael Jordan, kind of an old school guy, but he realized, I've got this otherworldly player named Steph Curry on my team that typically you would say, that's the craziest shot I've ever seen. Why is he pulling up from right inside half court to shoot a three? Or why is he making a pass like that? And he had to kind of check himself and say, wait a minute here. If I'm going to let Steph be great and reach his potential, I have to coach him different than maybe I was coached.
Yep. Yeah. And the flip side of that is that Steph, for all of his success, was just as open to Steve saying, okay, let's be mindful of the turnovers, or let's try to, in the case of when Steph got hurt going into the playoffs, we're going to start Jordan Poole, and Jordan Poole plays well. Steph doesn't play the first game. Second game, he's ready to go. You know what? Things are good. We're going to keep things as they are. We're going to let Jordan Poole start, and we're going to bring Steph off the bench. Now, just stop and think about that for a second.
Yeah, no kidding.
How many guys who already have rings, multiple rings, have been league MVPs, and they're healthy enough to play, and what, a second-year player, third-year player, I can't recall which year, but Jordan, very young player, totally unproven. We're going to let him keep rolling because we won the first game that way, and we're not going to rock the boat. And Steph, perfectly okay with it, because his idea was, and his perspective always has been, my first objective is to win. And so I can't allow my ego to get in the way. And that to me is the sweet spot for anybody who is looking to be coachable and be successful, which is you have to have this very exact balance of confidence and humility. And I don't know that anybody embodies that better than Steph Curry. If you like the shots that he takes, the things that he's overcome, guy at 6'2", 185, making the shots that he does, he has the supreme confidence in his ability to make the crazy shots. He doesn't just take them. He believes like there is a science to the madness, and he's proven it over and over again. But he also has the humility, as he says in the book, like to understand that he doesn't know everything, and that he has to take everybody into account when something is being done. And again, you're going to be a CEO. If you can manage that balance of confidence and you know how to lead, and at the same time, the humility to take information in and shape things for the people that are around you, I guarantee you will be successful in whatever you're doing as much as Steph Curry has been.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you hope that people take away from the book that we haven't discussed?
I think ultimately that the value of sports for a family is the relationships that it strengthens and builds, the experiences, the collective experiences that a family has, and what you learn and appreciate about each other as a result. That has been one of the great joys for me is with my kids. It's so funny. Like my daughter played in the NCAA tournament this year and had an incredible, game against the eventual national champions UCLA. And we were in the building to see that happen. And it was a joy to experience that with her. But I will tell you that the thing that I love the most is the fact that we go to the gym every day. I will do it after we record this. I go to the gym with her. I'm a rebounder. I'm her shooting coach. And we've spent hours upon hours together creating the opportunity for her to have that moment against the Bruins. And I will remember those hours far more. They mean far more to me. Not only leading to what it did, but knowing where that puts our relationship going forward. So I hope that's what I hope for every family that reads this, is that you get to experience the journey, because the journey really is the thing. It's not the end point. It's not the accolade. It's not the trophy. It's what you got to do together that I think is the most valuable.
Well done on the book. Congratulations on it. I want to cover some NBA topics with you, and I'll start since we were just talking about Steve Kerr. I don't know if you read Wright Thompson's amazing story on Steve Kerr, like super comprehensive. But, it's funny. Everyone's been speculating, is Steve Kerr going to return? Is he going to retire? Is he going to move into broadcasting? It sounds like there were basically two major factors in Steve Kerr returning. One, he gets to coach Steph Curry, this amazing player, and he wants to see it through. But two, his son works for the Warriors, Nick, and they live near the grandkids. And, it just goes to show, Rick, like sometimes we put so much weight into what goes into a decision, and sometimes it comes down to family or something personal. But, again, you're in the Bay Area. I think it's big news that Steve Kerr is continuing his head coaching journey instead of calling it quits. And it would have been weird to see Steph and Draymond with a different coach because they've had Kerr as the coach for so long.
Agreed. I would not have been surprised if he had hung it up because I know just how exhausted he was. He didn't have a whole lot of fun this past season, and I believe in part it was because the expectations and demands and the outside chatter was really loud. I mean, for people that aren't in the Bay Area or don't pay that much attention to the Warriors, if you look at his resume, you would never expect in a million years that people would think that he can't coach and he needs to be fired. But there was a drumbeat of that.
That's
fairly
crazy.
loud in the Bay Area from fans who perhaps became Warriors fans at the height of their dynasty. And that's their expectation now. And because the names are the same, they think the team is the same, which is not the case. As good as Steph Curry still is, he's not the same player. Same with Draymond Green. And they don't have the same supporting cast. And so I wouldn't have been surprised if he had stepped off. And this is actually, I hope that Warriors owner Joe Lacob reads the book, because I think that one of the struggles here was Joe was just looking at where he wanted the team to go and be, which was, we have to contend for a championship. Like that is what we do. That's who we are. And the reality is, and Steph, this is what people don't understand about Steph and why Steph is never considered going someplace else, because Steph embraces the challenge. And it's not the challenge of, I want to win another championship. It's, I want to see how good I can be with the group around me. How good can I make this team? And hopefully it leads us to a championship. But that's not the determination of whether I've been successful or not. It's, have I maximized who I can be and what we can be? And if I do that, then I can walk away from it at least content until we take another shot at it. And so I feel like that was part of the grind. I think it's part of why Bob Myers stepped away.
Yeah.
Because when someone's always just setting the bar here and saying we can't be satisfied until we hit this mark, well, it doesn't take into account what you're working with. We can't just manufacture championships. We can't just ignore the realities of age and injury and outside influences. And so I'm glad Steve is back. I guarantee you, on some level, aside from getting to continue to work with his son and getting to coach Steph Curry, there was some conversation about, I don't need to hear every day about how if we don't win a championship, we failed. Like, we need to approach this in a healthier way, considering where we are. I'm going to make the most out of what we have, and we'll see what that is, as opposed to it has to be this or it's a failure.
I look at Steph Curry's age. You look at Steve Kerr signed a 2-year extension. And of all of the teams who could use Giannis, it's the Warriors. They're in win now mode. I know the Bucks, it sounds like, are open to entertaining offers for Giannis. This has been an ongoing conversation. How do you see this playing out? And because, Giannis has also got a little bit of Steph in him where he's liked Milwaukee. He doesn't mind a small market. He doesn't have to be in the big market. But also, I think he wants to win. And Milwaukee's clearly in rebuilding mode. And if you could go to a Golden State or you could go somewhere else where you might get a chance at another ring, it sounds like he'd be open to that.
Yeah, this is the conflict for Giannis, and why this saga seems to have been going on for so long. It's because he honestly is conflicted between not wanting to be a ring-chasing star, appreciating what Milwaukee has done for him and how they've invested in him, and maybe knowing as a result of Damian coming to Milwaukee and what he lost in that happening. And now both sides, both the Blazers and Damian, realizing that their parting of ways probably wasn't in the best interest of either side, is now back there. And Dame had opportunities to go elsewhere if he wanted to after Milwaukee let him go. And Portland didn't have to sign him to a 3-year, $42 million deal. So what I don't know is how that informs Giannis's decision. But for him to get to Golden State in particular, he would have to say, I want to be traded to Golden State. Because there are other teams that can make far more attractive packages if they want him. But this is going to be guided by Giannis, one, demanding out, which I think he's still uncomfortable doing, and two, demanding that he go to a particular place. And so that ultimately is going to determine where, or still, I would say, if he ends up going someplace else, because I'm still not convinced that push comes to shove, that Giannis wants to declare, okay, I'm done with Milwaukee. I want to be someplace else. We got too many examples of how that hasn't worked for guys and they lost something as a result.
The one wild card here is if you listen to Jimmy Haslam's comments a few weeks ago, the co-owner of the Bucks, it sounds like he wants this resolved one way or the other by the draft.
Sure.
So if he steps in and says, look, we're not playing games anymore. Either you're here and you sign an extension, or we're trading you, but we're not continuing this song and dance. If it gets to the ownership level, I think rubber may meet the road, so to speak.
Sure. It's going to depend on, and I remember Masai Ujiri, who's now with the Dallas Mavericks, was with the Denver Nuggets at the time. And he was trying to get a read on Carmelo Anthony in terms of, are you committed here or do you want to be traded to New York? And Carmelo wouldn't give him a straight answer. And Masai took that as, I'm trading you. Definitively. Now, not every owner, every GM does that with a superstar player, particularly in a small market. I mean, you can talk big now, but then ultimately you're saying, okay, we're going to move a guy who's been an MVP and a superstar. That's an awful lot of corporate sponsorships and season tickets and all kinds of stuff that goes out the window if he's not definitively saying he doesn't want to be here. So now the other part is Jimmy does come from a football background, so they have a much direct way of dealing with players. They don't. Player empowerment does not exist in the same level outside of the quarterback position in the NFL for the most part. So it will be interesting to see how that ultimately plays out. But I understand Jimmy's position. I understand their position. Like, the draft is an important draft. Our building for next year is important. We need to know if we're building around you or we're building without you and the assets that we could potentially get in this draft if you're not going to be here. So I totally understand why they would say that. And I would totally hope that Giannis comes to a decision by then. Because the worst thing I think for him would be if he doesn't give them an answer and the non-answer becomes the answer. And we're just going to move you, and we're not necessarily going to move you where you want to go, because we're just going to go get the best package now because you haven't given us a list of of preferred destinations. Ultimately, that would not, I think that wouldn't serve Giannis well. And in the big picture, probably wouldn't serve the Bucks well either.
If you look at the NBA from 35,000 square feet, it certainly looks like to me, and I'm sure many others, that Oklahoma City and San Antonio are head and shoulders above everyone else as long as SGA and Wemby stay healthy. If you're building a team, whether you're the Bucks or the Warriors or the Washington Wizards with the number one pick, you're looking at this going, I've got to create something that can beat one of those two teams. We've seen this in the past with the Lakers and the Celtics and the Bulls. How do you look at the NBA as a whole right now when you have these two dominant teams that seem to be just entering like year two of their domination that could last for 6 or 7 years? And by the way, they're small market teams.
Yeah. I hope that I'm in the Eastern Conference and that those two beat each other up so that I'm facing whatever is left over. Yeah, look, they're both positioned with super young players. And and OKC has a multitude of assets. I believe San Antonio does. They have the ability to replenish, have incredibly smart GMs who have put this together, franchises that do things the right way and are value culture in a big way. So if I'm another team, I'm basically I'm trying to build my team for contending 3 years from now. Like if there's ever a time to take a slow growth approach and say, I'm going to collect assets and I'm going to get young players and I'm going to develop my program, this is the time to do that, because otherwise you're going to be beating your head against the wall. So short of some catastrophic injury.
Right.
And that's the one element here is that, I think we looked at Boston after they won the championship, and this is the one, I will say, this is the one other element that works against both OKC and San Antonio, and why still 2-3 years from now works as the timeline for everybody else. Because the way this collective bargaining agreement is structured, you eventually, if you're winning championships, you got to pay everybody.
Right.
And if you pay everybody, it handcuffs your ability to change up your team, your roster flexibility, obviously paying a ton of money. And Clay Bennett is not big on that in Oklahoma City, and paying, an exorbitant luxury tax. On top of that, it just handcuffs some of the other things you can do in terms of mid-level exceptions and other signings that other teams can't take, or other teams can take advantage of. So at some point, the way the CBA is now, it's awfully hard to build a dynasty, because at some point you have to pay your players to keep them. And then by the rules, it's going to limit everything else that you can do. So that's the opening that everybody has. But for this year, for next year, maybe the year after that, I mean, San Antonio's not perfect, but the way Wemby is evolving, he's crazy. Like it's crazy. I've never seen anybody with the maturity and obviously the size and athleticism, but just the overall presence and game. I'm a big Cade Cunningham fan for anybody who hopes an American makes the MVP ballot sometime in the next 5 years.
Yeah.
But Wemby is something else.
All right. Last question for you. In the last year, we've seen the Celtics, the Lakers, and the Trailblazers sold.
Yeah.
So you're not having Mark Cuban at the Board of Governors meetings anymore. Soon, Jeannie Buss won't be going to the Board of Governors meetings. Paul Allen was at the Board of Governors meetings for many years before he died. We're starting to see some turnover with owners. A-Rod and Mark Lore are in Minnesota. How do you think this impacts the league? Because anytime you bring in new thinking and, the Matt Ishbias of the world and the people like that, it seems like that's a different group of people around the table. We're talking about expansion into Seattle and Las Vegas that will bring in 2 more new owners. It's really starting to change in that Board of Governors room.
For sure. And I think it's been changing. And the big thing is, and it's not just who's, the venture capitalists and the real estate people and the people that are just are numbers crunchers. In David, the late great David Stern's age or day, those were people that had a civic interest in keeping a team where it was.
Right.
And they also had a passion and appreciation for the game of basketball and the culture that it created. Today, it's more about, in part because of the vast amount, the billions that are being paid for franchises, and the people who have the billions to do it. It's more of a Silicon Valley venture capitalist. I want to make 5x, 10x off of my investment. How do I do that? And one of the big things has been, I don't want to just own the team and the arena. I want to own the property around the arena, so that I am now getting money off of the hotels and the restaurants and all the ancillary stuff. But it's really become a monetary approach to how things are done. And I feel as if the game has suffered as a result. That becomes almost secondary to how are we making money. And I'll give you one quick example that I've become aware of because of the International Basketball Podcast Network that I'm putting together, which is, there was with under Stern and up until I guess five years ago or so, the NBA was big on basically spreading the gospel of basketball around the world, doing academies, doing basketball without borders. And the whole idea was we want to export it and we want to build audiences elsewhere. And what we really want to do is we want to create an incubator in all these different countries where you have players from Korea and China and Indonesia and South America making it to the NBA so that we can now draw those audiences in.
Right.
And ultimately, China as an example, they were investing a lot of money and it wasn't producing any players that were making it to the NBA. And they went, you know what? Board of Governors went, the cost is not, we're not happy with the return on investment. And so they've kind of pulled the plug. Now they have, I think, one academy, but it's like all of Asia. And that's just one example of how the lens has changed with the change in NBA owners, which is you've got billionaires thinking about billionaires as opposed to basketball. It's the National Billionaires Association. and that's the mindset.
Yeah. Rick, before I let you go, plug your podcast, plug your book. Where can people find all of these?
So easiest way to find all of the podcasts is on YouTube, on the United WeCast channel. There's 4 different podcasts there, including my solo one that I've been doing for a while. But I also have Full Court Passport, which looks at internationals from Europe, EuroLeague, and everything going on in between. Finding the Seams is the nexus between college basketball and the NBA with Brendan Haywood. And then Pacific Rims is with Greg Stolt, former NBA executive in Asia. And we cover everything in Asia when it comes to pro basketball, national teams, collegiate level, how that's starting, all of that. So that's the easiest way. And then on any podcast platform that you may have, you can find any and all of those podcasts.
Excellent. Again, the book Coachable, it's available now in bookstores everywhere and on Amazon.com. Rick, congrats on the book. Love your podcast. Keep up the great work. Thanks for joining me on Sports Business Radio.
Thank you, Brian.